our Zoom audience. Thank you for your patience, Zoom audience. I had a hard time picking a photo for tonight, but then this happened in my yard right before I came. And I know, right? The monarchs, our speaker tonight actually just wrote an article about the monarch migration and how it's delayed. And they just kind of hit San Antonio area in our region in bigger numbers. And this is the first one I've seen in my yard so far this year. And it was on the Crucita, which some people call a weed, which is very odd. Anyways, welcome everybody. Thank you. And this is our last chapter meeting for the year. And it's also my last chapter meeting serving in the role of the president. So I just wanted to say a special thank you to everybody. I can't believe 5 years has gone by so quickly. I started serving in this role in 2020. And that was a really strange year. And a lot of things happened in that year, didn't they? And the world got turned upside down. And I just wanted to say that really this community was a big part of how I stayed sane in 2020. And it is the case still. And so I really appreciate this community and all of the people who are working for this chapter. Many of them behind the scenes doing a lot of work that you don't realize. And I just want to thank all the people who have served on our boards over those years, our committees, volunteered, and just thank this community. It's an amazing group of people. So thank you very much. We have a couple of calls for volunteers. Shannon Jackson is working on a project at Apache Courts, which is on the west side of San Antonio. She's got a garden project. She's looking for people to help on some work days. We've got 3 work days, November 10th, 13th, and 17th from 9 to 1. And she's looking for multiple volunteers each day to help install this garden, this unique garden. We have a QR code here. And then also Pam has them in the back, and she's got more information. She even has the garden design in the room if you're in the room with us. Our next call for volunteers is for December 13th with one of our native plant partners. It's the Nectar Bar, and they are holding a native plant arts fest at the Nectar Bar. And we're looking for volunteers to serve at a chapter outreach table to just share information about native plants in our chapter. And we're looking for volunteers to do that from 1 to 3. This is the QR code for that event. And again, no, Pam's telling you no. Okay, sorry, I said it wrong. 11 to 1, 1 hour shifts. So 11 to 12, 12 to 1. Pam's got the info, and is it on at the QR code? Yeah, apologies for that. I misunderstood what she needed. So it'll be a fun event, though. They're going to have vendors there that are going to be, yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to thank Drake and the Nectar Bar for providing this herbal tea made out of native plants. It's spectacular. Ritual and bloom. Try it.
I didn't even, we've been so busy over here, I didn't even see that there's some tea in the room. So yes, thank you to Drake White and the Nectar Bar for providing that tea for us. Okay, and we have a lot of thank yous. We had a lot of events in October. So thank you to the volunteers that helped support the Monarch Butterfly and Pollinator Festival. We've got Bob Aarons, Misty Belmontes, Diane Gracia, John Hinojosa, and John Sass. And I know some of y'all are in here. Thank you very much. It was a fun event. They estimate 8,500 visitors attended that event. Also, thank you to the volunteers that helped out with our HEB native plant outreach. Diane Gracia headed up that effort this year, and our volunteers were Shannon Jackson, Mike McKissack, Roberto Mesa, Ruby Montalvo, and Michael Silva. And then we had a couple of our Native Landscape Certification Program classes. First up is level 2 that was held here. It's the landscape design with native plants, and our volunteers were Rocio Bomber, Diane Gracia, Peter Hernandez, Joan Miller leads the NLCP for our chapter, Pam Peck, Mike Peason, and Teresa Maslanka. And then we also held level 3 at Confluence Park. It's installation and maintenance of native plants. And our volunteers there are Rocio Bomber, Diane Grazia, Joan Miller again as the lead, and Cindy Segovia. And then we also had a Pollinatives held a plant sale that benefited our chapter. And we want to thank Pollinatives, of course, for that, as well as our volunteers. Andrew Awal, Jean McQueenie, Jerry Morrissey, Pam Peck led that effort. Tom Shaw, Rhonda Sherman, Anna Marie Stone, and Karen Van Leeshoot. And I think this is our last thank you for volunteers. This was also at Pollinatives, and there was a garden work day. We have a demonstration garden there at Pollinatives, and the volunteers were Jay Collins, Donald Gerber, Melanie Gerber, Haley Gianvaldo was the lead on this one, Pam Peck, and Todd Billows. And of course, we want to thank our native plant partners and remind you all that if you're looking for native plants, these are our chapter's native plant partners, Pollinatives, and the Nectar Farm. Okay, our next chapter meeting, as I mentioned, is January 27th, 2026. Stay tuned for who our speaker will be and what the topic will be, but make sure you save that date. And tonight, we are very happy to have Monika Maeckle. We have, she has come to us before and spoken on slides, but tonight she's here to talk about her new book, Plants with Purpose, which is an awesome book. And she's got some here in the back. And just bear with us as we transition and switch over to her presentation.
My tribe, and before I get started, I just wanted to one more time give a big shout out and appreciation to Lee Marlowe, who has served this organization. And around the PowerPoint not working, all that, I know how that is. So thank you, Lee, so much. We're going to miss you. I know you won't be leaving us completely, but you know, you've been a great influence on this organization. I'm very grateful. I know we all are. So thank you so much. So tonight, I'll talk about my book, Plants with Purpose. And I've had people always ask me, well, how did this book come about? And as you know, I'm kind of like in love with the monarch butterfly migration, and I wrote a book about the monarch butterfly. When I started writing that book, I mean, I was a master gardener involved in the native plant world, but I didn't even know the difference between a host plant and a nectar plant. And I remember being in our ranch and seeing all these monarch butterflies on frostweed. I was like, oh, they're milkweed. And I'm like, excuse me, but that's milkweed. It's something. And then as I, walked around our ranch, we're right on the river. We have it's a wildlife. We manage for wildlife, so we don't have any cattle or anything like that on there. And so all of these crazy plants sort of caught my attention. And as I kind of looked at them and was kind of enchanted by them, I was like, wow, what is that? What's that crazy thing over there? What are all those stickers on that seed pod? And as I sort of started to research and kind of went down the bunny trail, I was just like fascinated how really plants just had these incredible personalities, just like people. And so that inspired me to start thinking about this and digging in deep. And as I was thinking about it more and more, I was really kind of aghast at how we teach our children the names of lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. They'll never in their life see a lion, tiger, or bear except possibly in a zoo. And we don't teach them the names of asters and monarchs and oaks. So we don't teach our children, we don't enforce the idea that plants have identities, that they have personalities, that they have different things going on. And we all rely on plants for life on earth. They make the air we breathe happen, the food we eat possible, and the medicines that cure us happen. So it really intrigued me. And I just kind of really started to dig in. And when I did, I realized that every plant has a story. You just have to dig. And so, as you guys all know, as native plant enthusiasts here in this part of the world, especially when we witness this summer, it's really, really important which plants we choose to put in our landscape, in our yard, in our garden, whatever. And for so long, and I learned this in my Monarch book, when you interview nursery people in the commercial nursery business, they'll always say, oh, it's all about color, color, color. And there's a reason they have a whole section of commercial nurseries called ornamentals, because that's exactly what they are, ornamental. They don't necessarily serve any kind of purpose in the environment and the ecosystem. So what I decided was I was going to profile. I'm a journalist by training, and so we do profiles of people. And why are we not doing profiles of people? So I decided that I was going to do 25 profiles of plants, and every plant in the this book have at least 3 things going for it besides being beautiful. It can't just be beautiful. That's not enough. Beauty is a given. Every plant is beautiful in its own way. And so I decided to also think about this as if, how many people here hosted a dinner party? Okay. You know how much work it is to host a dinner party? You have to plan the menu. You got to make the shopping list. You got to go to the store and buy all the stuff. And sometimes you have to go to more than one store. You got to come home. You got to unpack everything. You got to set the table. You got to cook the meal. You got to put on nice clothing. You got to be not exhausted by the time the guests arrive. And then you got to sit with people for several hours and you clean the mess up. And so it's a big, big investment. Well, having a garden is like that too, in that you're going to have these plants as guests in your yard for weeks, months, years, possibly. And so if you invite people to your dinner party, would you only invite people who are beautiful? Or do you want plants to do something beyond that? Just like you don't want to just sit with someone who's beautiful, although that's great, but you want somebody who's interesting. They have stories to tell, that they make a contribution to the community. What do they do? What do they contribute? And so, as I said, replant in this book, there's at least 3 qualities beyond this. For example, can you eat it? So here, replant on this picture so you can eat it. And I brought this, and I know Lee pointed out to me this is technically not a native plant, but there are 18 species of passion flower. And I did not plant this plant, it just came up in my yard, and it's very rambunctious. You can eat it. It's got a lot of protein for birds. This one is growing up my screen for it. The cardinals literally come up and grab onto the screen and they pop these bubbles. They're kind of like bubbles, or this particular, I don't know what to call it. There's so many debates about the different passion flowers. They pop this open and there's seeds in there, which supposedly smell bad. I don't know where they come from, but anyway, the cardinals love this. They pop it open and they suck the seeds out, and then they throw the empty kids get out on the ground. So we got passion flower, we've got sunflower. We're going to talk about those. Everybody knows about nopales. You can salad out of those. You can eat the fruits. And in the middle there, it's Turk's cow. Did you know that you can eat the Turk cow flower? And it's enchanting when you make pancakes and you put the Turk's cow flowers on the over, and they kind of get caramelized, and then they have this beautiful red presence, which is pretty fun. And then over on the far side there, we have wild garlic, wild onions. We have these growing all over our ranch, and I pulled some out, brought them home. I have them in a pot. Every time I need fresh chive, I just go out there and chop some up. You need every part of that plant: the root, the stalk, and the stem, and the flowers. So, can you make tea for it? And this again, these are the qualities. These plants had to have at least 3 of these qualities besides beauty. So can you eat it? Can you make tea from it? It's shocking how many plants in your yard can make tea from it. It may not taste great, but it can make tea from it. So we're talking. I don't know if you guys know American Beautyberry, but you can make tea from this. It's very medicinal, but you can also make insecticide out of it, which I tried. And my husband used like a mosquito magnet Bob, right here. Raise your hand, Bob. Mosquito magnet Bob. It does not work for him, but the mosquitoes don't come after me when I spray myself with American Beautyberry insecticide. But you can make jam out of these berries to make tea from it. There's so many things you can do, and so many of the plants that you don't even realize you can make tea from. So it's just good to know. Like when I started writing this book, was during COVID, like we was saying, and I was just, we were like, oh wow, we're gonna have a shutdown. We're gonna have to feed ourselves. It'd be really good to know, like, what I can eat in my yard. So I was really kind of very motivated to learn all this stuff. So anyway, so can you eat it? Can you make tea from it? Does it serve wildlife? This is the giant swallowtail on goldenrod. The goldenrod is blooming right now. We got some rain. It is starting to bloom in my yard. It's kind of burnt, but you can also make vinegar, goldenrod vinegar out of goldenrod. But there's so many ways that plants serve wildlife. The seeds, the birds eat the seeds. butterflies lay their eggs on the plants. The eggs hatch, they eat the plant, and they grow up to be a butterfly. Then they go fly around and they drink nectar. So there's so many ways to shelter, cover for some creatures. So does it do that? It's another quality that it can exhibit. And this is my favorite part. Does it have a fun story? And this is the really fun part, I think, that I found most captivating about the book was just how every plant, not every plant, but a lot of particular plants, the ones that I would invite to my dinner party, they all have stories to tell. So, for example, on the top right is frostweed. You guys are probably familiar with this plant, but that plant exhibits a quality called crystallifolia, which was discovered or named anyway in Austin, Texas, UT Austin. And during the first frost, if you're present around frostweed, the first frost of the year, and you walk outside, you will see all of these weird, enchanting ice crystals that pop from the stalks of the plant. What happens is the flow freezes and it oozes out of the plant. It makes all those ice crystals. And I always thought it would be really fun. I did have my friend locally call it on a rock wall. If you could eat the crystal, it would be really cool. You could like make super cool cocktail, like sprinkle hot honey, on top and try to put it water. He said he didn't know, and you know, I eaten them, I tasted them, they just taste like water, but probably would recommend it until it's been further tested. On the right is the same, that's the flower of this plant, the passion flower, and there's an entire history of this plant where the reason it's called flower, and I don't know if this one's the Corona de Cristo, Crown of Christ. There's one particular one called Crown of Christ. There's an entire legacy of Christian meaning attached to this plant because you've got the 10 petals for the disciples, you've got the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, which is the stamens, you've got, you know, the three, I can't remember what, but I mean, there's like every part of this plant symbolizes something in Christian faith. And it was very frequently planted in missionary gardens. And so it's just like, wow, all that about the plant, like it's just crazy. The nopal here on the right, that white stick that you see on the plant, that is actually an insect. And if you squish that white, it turns bright pink magenta color right there. And it's edible. And for years it was used to color Campari, that color of Campari soda, the Italian drink. But then they got in trouble because vegetarians didn't want to eat insects, and so they switched to red dye. I think they're right back now. The other thing is that red dye is what was used to paint the San Antonio missions. So this plant has legs. If you were sitting next to Nopales at the dinner party, you would have plenty to talk about. And then over on the right there is Jimson wheat, which is one of my favorite plants. I'm going to deep dive into Jimson wheat here in a minute. But again, so does every plant has a story, you just have to dig. Okay, and does it provide a unique landscape service? And I know typically this plant is not native. It has citrus in the blood, created by a recipe from Monica's margaritas, which is the best on the planet. But that plant is, yes, that's our alley. We live in downtown, and that's an alley that serves to our driveway. And when we built our house, it was an empty lot. We built it from scratch. First time in my life, we started on a yard, like, you know, you pull out, just do everything from scratch. And I was working with Clinton and Charles Bartlett, who I'm sure a lot of you know, in Haven Landscaping. And Charles used to be a botanist for the Department of Defense. And so I was so excited because I bought lawn furniture, brand new lawn furniture, and this cool slider, put it on the front porch. And man, so I'm just gonna pull up on that alley and they're gonna unload my slider and they're gonna steal our furniture. We're gonna figure out how to slot it. That's a perfect plan for you. And Charles told me that when he was working for the Department of Defense as a botanist, his job was to landscape around nuclear facilities. Because apparently teenagers would often try to break in and see what was inside, and you know, that's everything. So he planted citrus trifoliata, which is a particular kind of citrus that's the most freeze tolerant, which is grafted with just every citrus plant that you buy, lemon, Meyer lemon, lime, whatever. It's grafted with this plant right here. And when it freezes to the ground, it often comes back only as citrus trifoliata. Where you can see on there, it's really ornery thorns are poking out in like claws. And so I have to tell you, I've never anybody steal anything that's like flourishing. So yeah, well, can it take the heat? That's the other question, especially in our part of the world. Even though a plant might be drought tolerant, doesn't need a lot of water, doesn't necessarily mean that it can survive 95-degree days for 5 months at a time. When I lived I had to live in Austin for a year in 2011, and I moved into an apartment. In the front yard was all Bermuda grass, and I asked my landlord, I said, is there any way that I could maybe just have half the front yard? I have to be a gardener. She said, yeah, sure. So I planted these plants and I was hand watering them. It was during drought in 2011. You've got the jimsonweed in the front, which I'm talking about. You've got milkweed, you've got Cowpen daisy and lantana. Those are all plants with purpose. Okay, so we're going to talk in depth about 3 plants real quick. Jimsonweed. This plant, if I were having a dinner party, I get to choose who I sit next to, and I would choose this guy right here. It's such an interesting plant. First of all, it has this gorgeous white flower, 2 different flowers, blooms at night, and just like most plants that bloom at night, it's white and it has a very strong fragrance because it's trying to attract moths and pollinators to come pollinate it. So it's gorgeous. It's incredibly drought tolerant. I found this plant because at the ranch we did road work. We did a new road. And this pigeon flew everywhere. Like it's getting any water. It was the heat of the summer. I was like, whoa, what is this plant? When I went out for a night hike with my little headlamp and like walking down the road, this plant was blooming. There were moths everywhere. This fragrance was just like magical. You could just take it in. It was so gorgeous. Love planting this plant on a walkway we were going to walk by at night. I mean, it's also the close plant to the Sphinx moss, so it's got pollinator benefits and wildlife benefits. The Sphinx moss layer eggs on there, and it turns into this very similar to a tomato hornworm kind of one. Understand that for people who have chickens, get chickens, they love this for a snack, like nice, a delicious snack for. Now, one thing about this plant, and I brought some. This is from my front yard. This is the seed pod that we're going to talk about, and this one's kind of small because I've been cutting it back, taking it to preservation like this. This seed pod will form, and they call it Indian thorn apple. And every part of this plant is toxic. So do not eat this plant. Do not make tea from this plant. I've never had a problem with the plant. Some people supposedly they can get a rash from it, but I've never had a problem. But what happens is the plant makes this from the white bloom and then it busts open and often turns, when it's been so hot like it's been lately, it turns kind of rusty brown and it dries out and it pops open and the seeds splatter all over. 2 of these plants fell from the ranch and have like lots in my yard. So if anybody needs gingerweed, it grows like a very tuberous root. It's hard to get rid of it, just cut it back and dig it up, but it does self-propagate very effectively. The cool thing about gingerweed is it's one of the first examples of ethno-botanical warfare. During the Revolutionary War, the colonists learned about this plant from indigenous people. And so when the British came over, self-defense, they decided to make a stew out of gingerweed and they fed it to the British. And this happened in Jamestown, Virginia. And so the plant was originally known as Jamestown weed and then eventually gingerweed. But way before that, I'm not sure, this had to be several thousand years ago, I don't know, maybe 5,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago. Down in the Devil's River area and other parts of South Texas and northern Mexico, indigenous peoples used gingerweed as a spiritual tool, and they call these power bundles, thorn apples, but the indigenous people call these power bundles. Apparently, if you knew what you were doing, and again, you never recommend this, they smoked it or ate it or did something, and they were able to communicate with the spirits. And these are cave paintings from the Devil's River, documented by the Shomo Project at the Whitty Museum. And those story things that they see the top, those that project, they label those as gingerweed pods. And here's another example of that. So it's just a really cool plant that just has tons of dimensions, meanings, uses, and just really cool little fun part. Okay, let's talk about sunflowers. You guys probably already know about sunflowers, but I learned a lot about sunflowers. This is actually at a sunflower farm, I believe in Michigan, where Bob and I went one summer, and I was just delighted to be able to walk through these sunflower fields. People like made little faces in the sunflower. That was kind of neat. Um, but I didn't really realize until I dug into this that everything, this is not the flower. That's not the flower, the big round thing. Every one of those little yellow things is a flower. And so you can see why a pollinator would love this plant because they can just go sit down in one spot and not even have to move a muscle and they're just like sipping on nectar. So that's what's going on here. You got a moth and a bee and like slurping it out because they don't have to move. It's like having a bounty of a bar just handed to you and not even having to lift your finger, not even a fork. So that's pretty cool. Meanwhile, the sunflowers are on the left, they turn into the seeds. So each of those is a flower that turns into a seed. So you've got a flower and then you have the seed, which of course you can eat. You can eat those seeds, you can feed them to birds, and the birds will literally come and land on the sun, especially if you get the big ones like the mammoths. They'll just land on the sunflower and pick those seeds up. It's great. The other cool thing about sunflowers is that they have this trait called heliotropism. And so you can see here in the sunflower field, all the sunflowers are facing the same direction. That's because somehow they're programmed to follow the sun with their heads. So literally in the morning, sun's over here, the sunflowers are watching the sun all day long, going all across the sky, and at the end of the day, they drop their head. They drop their head, and the next day they start over. And when they die, you often see the sunflower just with their head falling over like an explosion. So it's really cool, and it's really great for kids. If you give a kid the sunflower seed and they watch this little seed, they're so easy to grow. Annuals go from a little seed to like this giant 12-foot tall thing with this big head and all these multiple flowers on it. They can eat the seeds. It's pretty amazing. One thing I did not know about, and I learned this again in my deep dive from Acre Seed Company, is that you can do the head of this thing. Well, you harvest the sunflower before the seeds turn dark. We're trying to finish reading, which is in the book. I waited too long in the sunflower plant, and it's awful. It's like a chicken scratch, but the people's on and those little yellow things that are the pre-seeds, they're like between seed and flower. They taste exactly like corn. So you scrape it all up, brush it with tomato, sun-dried tomato oil. You can buy a jar of sun-dried tomato. It's got oil. You brush that all over it. You put it on the grill for 5 minutes. You flip it, cook it, and then you serve it. Basil, and sun-dried tomatoes, and it tastes like a cross between artichoke and corn, and it's crazily dense. It's one of those things that during COVID, I'm like, now I like the movie. It's just for me now and so now and I'm still eating a sunflower. Good stuff. These are valuable skills, valuable knowledge, and how to figure it out. The other cool thing about sunflowers is that they are the host plant of the border-path butterflies. So this is a Kilpin daisy, which is one of my favorite sunflowers, and native, very prolific, huge seed producer. I brought like 2 of these from the ranch. They covered my yard for a while. They're kind of a disturbance plant, and if they have a lot of competition, they die back. But you can always cultivate them if you want to. You can pull them out if you don't want them. The cool thing about the four peaches is that they lay their eggs in clusters, unlike the monarch, which lays singular eggs. And so you'll see this glob of black little caterpillars, and you'll think, man, they're chilling. But it's no big deal. I mean, that's all part of the process. The plant will recover, you can cut it back and it'll come back fine. But turns into this chrysalis, and then eventually this butterfly, which you didn't see many of those this year. Okay, so now we're talking about milkweed, which I cannot avoid talking about because my history and my fascination with this creature and this whole ecosystem. But there's lots of milkweed. We've named milkweed, which is very contentious. We've talked about that before. But milkweed is a really valuable plant on a lot of levels, and many people and scientists have documented it's not just, it's a whole ecosystem unto itself. It has all these different insects they're specialized to work within an milkweed ecosystem. And there you have on the left, you've got the egg on the left, on the left, you got the first instar caterpillar. It goes through its phases and turns into this bright, chubby, black, yellow, and white striped creature, which then forms this gorgeous jade chrysalis. And the gold flecks that you see, scientists have speculated that those are the air holes through which the future butterfly breathes. If anybody's ever been able to experience this, it's a pretty magical moment when you witness the actual, hatching or eclosion of a butterfly from the chrysalis. You can usually tell the night before it's going to do it. It's usually 10 days, 10 to 14 days from the time it becomes a chrysalis, but the night before it's going to become a butterfly, it's sort of taking color from a little pink and dark. And the next morning you get up and it's clear and it just feels like, okay, coffee because it's going to happen in the next 2 hours. The seeds make big teeth clean out around 10 or 11 a.m. I don't know if that's just coincidence, but every time it just seems like it works out like that. And you can tell what's about to happen because you'll see that clear chrysalis and then they drop out of there and they're all malleable and very, very vulnerable at that moment. And they need to be able to hang from something where they can be vertical. Leaves can drop or fly. But then as they start to, you see them going like this and they're ready to fly, you take them outside and they do their thing. And here we have one on swamp milkweed, which we have at the ranch growing along the river. But as I said, it's not just about the monarchs and the queens. There's all these insects, aphids love milkweed. Food for a lot of creatures and they provide honeydew. There's milkweed bugs, there's milkweed beetles, there's aphids, there's an entire world just around milkweed. And Anurag Agarwal wrote the book Milkweed and Monarchs. He called them the monarchs. Thing. So tell me which one. Here we have Asperula, which is antelope horse milkweed, which is very often the very first thing blooming in the springtime when the monarchs move north. And you can see on this one, there's tons of bees. It's not just monarchs that love spring, but bees as well. And then there's the famous barking blue jay fern. I think I told the story last year when I did a monarch book, but this is a very famous experiment that Lincoln Brower did, where he was trying to prove that milkweed it's toxic to predators and it's what makes monarchs resistant to predators because it's pretty well documented and it's scientifically proven that basically monarchs don't have to worry about being eaten by birds. And when you see monarchs, one of the cool things I think that's captivating about monarchs is when they fly, they just have this sort of dreamy flight pattern where they're gliding along. Whereas other butterflies, like skippers are like skittering, trying to avoid the birds from getting them. The reason that they can do that is because they don't taste good. And this was proven in this experiment where somehow Dr. Brower convinced a monarch caterpillar to eat cabbage instead of milkweed. I don't know how he got him to do that, but somehow he did. So those particular caterpillars were not toxic. Then he fed a cabbage fed caterpillar to a blue jay. It's like, oh boy, that's good. And then he fed another one that was fed milkweed, and we fed the milkweed fed caterpillar to the blue jay bar. And he took this photo, and it's this famous, famous photo in monarch butterfly circles called the barking blue jay photo, which proved beyond a doubt that it's the milkweed that makes monarchs toxic to predators. It's pretty amazing. The other cool thing about milkweed is the fluff. And I just like to point out that I am making a milkweed pillow. If anybody would like to participate, I think Guinness Book of World Records record for milkweed pillow because Belly's done it. So if you eat milkweed, please reach out and I'll put your name down as somebody who contributed. But this stuff is incredible, incredibly buoyant. Obviously, it serves pollination well because every seed is attached to a little piece of fluff, and when those seed pods bust open, just like they do on gingerweed, seeds become mature. They pop open, and the wind catches the fluff, carries it somewhere, and then plants that seed down the road, and that's how propagation occurs. But the really cool thing is that during World War II, they used milkweed to make to make so milkweed It's so much. It's definitely a plant. I really appreciate some of my milk. And the other thing, I did not do this. I'd like to say I cooked every recipe in the book, but I have to say I didn't make the recipe. I did print a recipe for the parents. Mention that it's not a rod. It's to his family. Common milkweed. Apparently, if you harvest common milkweed very young, and boil it 3 times during the wild, not every time afterward, it tastes exactly like asparagus. And it's been, I don't know if anybody remembers the early 74 Yule Gibbons. But Yule Gibbons, what was the name of his book? It was a really famous book.
Wild asparagus.
There you go, Stalking the Wild Asparagus. Thank you. So this is wild asparagus right here. He just loved it. He even wrote, I bought the book and I read the chapter on, I read the book, I think I have in my book. He would host milkweed parties where we would go out and gather, come all the stocks and we'd boil them 3 times and we would have to his family, including his 2 children. And he's a typical collegeist, so if he's so kind of that, I guess it's okay. Again, proceed at your own risk. So anyway, but those are all my proposals I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take some questions, but I just wanted to say as well that the book is a whole section called From the Ground Up, which is basically a gardening 101, and each plant tells, what do you need to grow this plant, what zone is it appropriate for, how much water does it need, what kind of soil does it like, and so in order to do that, obviously you need to know how to do that. There's a whole section in the book on how to figure out what situation. And as we all know, for those of you who that some situation like a plant can work in one environment where there be no shade or sun or the soil's different. So you just really have to take a few minutes to do a little bit of history and do a little, not history, but research to figure out what is your situation, what kind of soil do you have, how much sun are you going to get, how often you'll be able to water this. And that's going to determine whether or not it's going to be successful. So these are all the plants listed in the book. I'm happy to take some questions now. If anybody's got questions, we're going to be selling the book over here. If you'd like, I can sign it for you. That's what I got. Sir.
You said that the military used the milkweed seeds for what again?
To make life preservers. Stuffing for the life preservers because it's so buoyant.
Yeah.
But I think the question was, what did the military use to milkweed? So there's actually, and I mentioned this in the book, there's actually a company now, Hobie's will give me this for my birthday, right? It makes milkweed quilts and milkweed pillows, and they're very expensive. And they're pillows that are stuffed with milkweed fluff. They're like $500 a pillow. And I just get to exactly. I need your help. Anybody else? Yeah.
Seeing a lot of butterflies on your walks. I've been amazed at our place. We're north of Lotus. Amazed at the number of flowers that we've seen. I can't believe the flowers still now. And the butterflies it's amazing all the butterflies. Are you seeing a bunch of them at your place?
We had did a road project this year, and I did a bunch of, we rented a seed planting project on the side of the road, and we had an incredible rain in July, very dangerous, obviously for seeds and everything, but we had an incredible butterfly presence, like hundreds of butterflies, mostly in clammy weed. But just recently, we haven't had, we've had butterflies, but no monarchs. And just today, it seems like for the first, like I was in my yard, there are dozens of butterflies for the first time in San Antonio. But it's been a very strange year with like that midsummer rain, and then it's super dry spell, super hot spell, and then a little rain. So yeah, very unusual.
That's what has surprised us the most because we haven't had a lot of rain. We just got tons of flowers. And we've been having monarchs probably for a month now.
Wow, very watery.
No,
Even water. Wow.
native pasture. No, it's really been, like I said, I'm just really surprised at all the different kinds of flowers. And I've been very surprised at the number of butterflies.
It's in the back.
Monica, can you repeat the questions of this?
Yes, sorry about that. I will do that.
I heard this in speaking that
monarch migration is different this year, so it's going west of here out towards Delaware, apparently the trees are all killed and they haven't been spinning out towards the coast. They brought the same thing up at the Hummingbird Fest, and it's too hot in the north, and they have all got the triggers. It's still on the south, so Laura said, Laura, they even have the Hummingbird Fest in September, this 2 to 3 weeks.
And the question was, people have been talking about how the monarch migration is very late this year. And it's also further lengthening that is absolutely what I've seen. I was telling somebody earlier that my birthday's October 13th, so and peak migration supposedly for our latitude is October 10th to the 22nd. So I always have like Monica's monarch birthday party at our ranch on the Llano, and they roost on our property across the river, and it's pretty predictable, it's pretty reliable. For 20 years, we've gone out and usually tag a couple hundred butterflies. This year, I saw 3 butterflies on October 13th. We went out last weekend and we had a lot of butterflies, not as many as normal, but definitely, a couple of clusters, we tagged 34 butterflies. But then we had that storm Friday night, and then it got cool, and the next day it seemed like it blew in. But one of the big factors has been the wind. The wind has been from the south and the west, and it's pushing them over. And just today, just as we were coming here, it was really windy out, and I checked my windy app, and it was like the winds from the north, and that's why it's pushing them down now. We're going to have them in San Antonio for the next couple of days. I saw more monarchs today than I've seen all season. This morning, and this flowers. So it's just, to the monarch watch this week. I wrote about it on my website at the Texas Butterfly Ranch, and she was saying how it was a very positive early season for the monarch migration, but as the heat dragged on and the wind, and also, not only the fact that they have this much longer marathon flight to make because it's going on extra weeks. There's not a lot of nectar left because of the dry spell that we had down here. Like at our ranch on Atlanta, there's very little nectar. I mean, even when we got down rain on Friday, the color run burnt to a crisp, the frosting hard. So she said it doesn't bode well. We'll see how it ends up. But you were just saying, from saying that she was in the clouds. I think it just depends where you are. But for us, it's been very dry and very nectar deficient. Yes, ma'am.
Familiar with all of those plants except number 6, melon.
Oh, cucamelon. Yes, these are mostly native plants. They're all well adapted plants, I think. We can argue about what's well adapted. Someone say that this patent flower is not welcome because it's overly rambunctious and hugs all, good wine and eats all the cheese and desserts. But cucamelon is this adorable plant that the Drake wife gave me a plant. So they planted it, and all of a sudden, a month later, this weird vine is like crawling up my screen for something. And all of a sudden, they look like little baby watermelons, like little tiny bit. Cucamelon, which is on the list. I don't know if it's well pickled, but it's basically a cucumber that you sort of a little tiny miniature watermelon. And it's so adorable and easy to grow, and it just keeps coming back. I haven't had it this year, but I mean, if you've got it's a standing book, if you had a vote for the most adorable plant, cucumber would be the one because it's just so cute. And kids love it. It's like, and they can eat it off the vine, you can pickle it, use it as a garnish, you can slice it up, and you can probably. Yeah, but that's a different plant. There's 2 of them. There's one that turns purplish. I talked to Mark Fortenberg about this. There's 2, but the cucamelon that you can buy, you can buy seeds for it. It's not poisonous, but there is one that looks to me like it that can be poisonous. Again, you gotta do your research. You gotta be thoughtful about it. Anybody else? Yes, sir. I have to.
Indigenous people, how many of these plants did they actually use for food sources? Half of them, third of them use the food sources for indigenous people.
I'm not sure. Oh my God, I know a lot of them, and if they were used, it's known that one of the so many of the plants were used by indigenous people for food. There's a really amazing database that I rely heavily on called the Native American Ethnobotanical Database. And you can go to that database, you can put any name on any plant and it'll tell you the entire history of that plant, which tribes, what, every plant on this little search, poultice for, used for childbirth, used for inflammation or something. It's like, wow. And, you can make tea from it to treat coughs or who knows what. So I don't know off the top of my head, but a lot of these plants were probably used for food. Yeah, again, I don't know that off the top of my head. And I saw
Can you repeat that, please, sir?
the Native American Ethnobotanical Database is the name of the resource. You can just Google it. Because it's free, it's not fancy, but it's very informational. The other great resource I use a lot, like your Java Wapno database. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Well, Albert Brockman,
Yes.
we are, what are your favorite things about farming?
What about frog food? It's great. You know, my friend yard. Great ground cover. I didn't know that you used for wet frog fruit. Right back. People are looking at a ground cover, instead of a lawn, if you put frog fruit in, you can make tea out of it. So the host planted 3 different butterflies. I can't remember which ones. It's got an adorable little flower. So I think it's a great plant. You can eat it too. I did try to eat it. It's personal. Things that's interesting is like a lot of these things you can eat, but maybe not. But I mean, you have to if you're starving. Okay, anybody else? Yes, ma'am, way back there.
Okay, you have elder, goldenrod, and nettle. Did you?
I wouldn't see it all very from my list. I mean, that's just was volume 2, who knows, maybe it's kind of, let's see, I mean, yeah, this is just a starting point, but I think, this book is that it just encourages people to look at plants differently. Like, every plant does have a story, and we just ignore plants. I don't know if anybody's read this incredible book called Light Eaters, The Light Eaters. It's such a great book by a woman who's a journalist, and she basically takes all these scientific studies and processes them and puts it into language we can all understand, all the jargon's removed. But there was a book in the 70s, I think it was called The Secret Life of Plants, that apparently took scientists off to looking at plants and plants have senses just like people, that they can hear, they can feel, and communicate. And she documents this and gives these amazing examples of how plants are basically sentient beings that have all these qualities and all these sensibilities that we don't know about. And one of the reasons we don't, since we don't have words to describe what a wild plant hears, because it hears differently than we do. But literally, after I read that book, every time I brushed past the plant, I was like, oh, excuse me. And I literally felt differently about plants. It's crazy. And I strongly recommend that book. It really helps you see plants differently. The Light Eaters by Zoe somebody. I don't know her last name now, but a book review on my website. But it was a New York Times bestseller, and it's a science book, which you didn't have very often. Anybody? Yes, ma'am. What? Yes, it turns out.
Question.
The question was, flowering red yucca, is it edible? And the answer is yes, because guess what? You didn't know this. Flowering red yucca is actually asparagus. It's in the asparagus family. Yeah, and if you look at the red bloom before it kind of really puts out, it looks like an asparagus. And everyone can eat it. Very cool plant, and I was in Dallas recently, and I couldn't believe this. I don't know why I was in San Antonio. Central Expressway, which is I-75, which is the most crowded, one of the most crowded highways that I can remember. I grew up in Dallas. In the middle of that highway, they have a concrete corridor, and in the middle between north and southbound lane, the entire corridor was planted with flowering red yucca. And when I was there, it was up for a minute. These beautiful red arms were just hanging out and waving at me as I drove by at 70 miles an hour. It was so beautiful. And that plant, once it's established, doesn't require anything. And you can imagine how hard it must be to water a plant in the middle of I-75. And so that's why they planted it, and the plant was thriving. So very, very incredible plant. Stephen? Yes, sir.
What plant is edible on the red yucca, the blooms or the leaves?
I believe the blooms, no, I don't think the leaves, as I recall, the leaves are not edible. Oh, the question was, I'm sorry. What part of the red fire red yucca is edible, and the bloom, I'm sorry, put out. That's prime time to eat it because the blossoms are closed, and it's kind of like asparagus, with everything closed up and condensed. I didn't eat it myself. I don't have a recipe for it in there, but there's a lot available online about that. Yes, that's another useful thing about plant. The question, the commentator noted that you can use the leaves of flowering to like leaf baskets and strip off string and do all kinds of things. In addition, people use it for that. Great. Well, I think we're about out of time, frankly.
We are, it's 7:53. Any final questions for each one?
Great. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Monica. She's gonna be back here with her book, and if y'all want to get it signed, this is your perfect opportunity. Thanks, Monica.
Here, everyone.